Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as is usual, there is always an abundance of important issues to discuss in Guyana. I want to begin by recognizing all of our viewers who are joining me right across the length and breadth of Guyana on Facebook, across the Caribbean, North America, and of course Europe and even further afield. I also want to welcome our viewers in Region 5 and Region 6 in particular, the Quarantine Coast, and I also want to welcome our listeners who are joining us on Freedom Radio on Rob Street. I want to also apologize for not having the program over the past few weeks, and that is because of my engagement in the budgetary process in the National Assembly. From now on, I will endeavor to be here every Tuesday unless there is something exceptional that keeps me away from this program. Well, as I said, we have a packed agenda to discuss tonight, and I want to begin with the series of litigation that has been filed by APNU AFC string of lawyers headed by Senior Counsel Roysdale Ford, Comrade Ramjetan, Raphael Trotman, Darren Wade, Manza Desir, and I can't remember who else. A large number of them have obviously chosen litigation as a path of political activism. Nothing is wrong with that. I welcome that kind of litigation. All I ask is that the judicial process, that the legal process not be abused and misused with frivolous and vexatious litigation. Unfortunately, that is the type of litigation that we have been visited with by the APNU AFC in the National Assembly and in court. So we have pending in the system an application that was filed by one David Patterson, in which he sought to challenge the 2020 budgetary estimates for constitutional agencies. Now, the 2020 budget, as you are aware, has been passed by the National Assembly. The monies disbursed, and we have entered a new budgetary cycle for the year 2021. So that litigation has been overtaken by time. It has been overtaken by events. And that is a principle, established legal principle, that courts have used not to adjudicate on matters that are spent or are of academic and historical value only. The court's position is that having regard, and it's a policy decision of the courts, not only in Guyana, but right across the world, having regard to the heavy load of litigation, having regard to the scarcity of judicial resources, and having regard to the time that is spent on litigation, and because there is a competition for time and judicial resources as a matter of policy, the judiciary has decided that they will not waste time with cases that have been overtaken by event and that have been overtaken by time. This case filed by Patterson obviously falls into that category. And on the last occasion, the judge before whom the case is being heard so indicated to Mr. Roysdale Ford. Yet, Mr. Ford persists in having the matter proceeded with and insists that the case must be determined. Well, we have put our submissions in, and of course I made that very point that I just made in our written submissions, as well as submitting and giving various legal arguments supported by judicial authorities that the case cannot succeed, assuming that it was one that was not overtaken by events, because the High Court has no jurisdiction to inquire into the business of Parliament, save and except if there is an allegation that Parliament has contravened the Constitution. In the case filed by Mr. Patterson, there is no such allegation. There is no allegation of a constitutional violation. In the absence of such an allegation, the High Court or the judiciary has no business in reviewing or adjudicating upon the legality or propriety of what Parliament does in the course of its business. It's only one wrong that Parliament can commit, and it's a violation of the Constitution. If you are not alleging a violation of the Constitution, then the High Court has no jurisdiction to inquire into the business of Parliament. Mr. Ford and Patterson are contending that the budgetary estimates for the constitutional agencies for the year 2010 were put before the Parliament and approved by the Parliament, not in violation of the Constitution, but in violation to certain amendments done to the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act. In other words, they are alleging not that the Constitution is violated, but that the FMAA, the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act, is being violated. And the law says, the Constitution says, that anything done in the Parliament or anything said in the Parliament is immune from suit, save and except if Parliament or someone in the Parliament violates the Constitution. Recall, I challenge them when they cut the budget, when they had a one-seat majority. But in my case, I ensured that I showed or I alleged that a constitutional provision was being violated. And that was the only way that the court had jurisdiction. When they gagged Clement Rohi from speaking, I went to the court. But again, I established to the court that a member's right to speak, which is a constitutional right of expression, was violated. And only then the court had a basis to inquire. So on both grounds, in my respectful view, this case will fail. But they are persisting with it, and the court will have to decide. So that is one case. There is another case filed again, this time by Christopher Jones, in which he is saying that the two parliamentary secretaries appointed by the PPP, Vikash Ramkisoon and Sarah Brown, that they are sitting in the parliament illegally. And Mr. Ford, Roysdale Ford again, and the same band of lawyers want the court to put these two people out of parliament. Now, Ford is relying on the case I had filed against Winston Felix and Keith Scott. And he's saying that for the same reason, and remember, I won those cases. I won both in the High Court and I won at the Court of Appeal. And he's saying that the same principle applies to parliamentary secretaries. Again, in my respectful view, he is completely wrong. Keith Scott and Felix were elected members of the National Assembly under the Constitution. But they were put in the Assembly as technocratic ministers. That is not possible because a technocrat minister under the Constitution must be a person who is not on the list of candidates for the political parties. I repeat, a technocratic minister is a person who must not have been named as a candidate on the list. Felix and Scott were candidates on the APNU AFC list, and they were made ministers, technocratic ministers, by Granger and put in the parliament. That is a violation of the Constitution. A technocrat minister means exactly what it says. You are not political, you are technocratic, meaning that you are not from the list. You are not a political person. A parliamentary secretary now can come from the list or can come from off the list. The Constitution is very clear in my view and in my reading. So there is no similarities between the two. The principles involved in the Felix and Scott case are radically different from the case relating to parliamentary secretaries. So that one is pending in the court, and I have already filed submissions in that one, and we will get a decision shortly. Then there is also yet another challenge, this time to the 2021 budget. And again, Mr. Ford and Trotman and Ramjatan and Wade and Walton Desir are all the lawyers, and they are claiming that the budgetary estimates now for 2021 of the constitutional agencies were wrongfully and unconstitutionally laid before the Parliament, approved and disbursed. They approached the court for interim orders preventing Parliament from proceeding to determine these budgets. But of course, by the time the case came up for hearing, the budgets were already approved, disbursed, and the Appropriation Act signed. So last week, the judge threw out their challenge and awarded costs against them. But the remainder of the case is still there. They are challenging some provisions of the Fiscal Management and Accountability Act to be unlawful and unconstitutional. Well, we will deal with that. at the appropriate time. That is left in the court. But I want to draw to the public's attention that in that case, the applicants are Ganesh Mahipal, an APNU AFC MP, Coretta MacDonald, an APNU AFC MP, and I have no problem with them, the two of them. I have a problem with the other parties. The Guyana Public Service Union, the Police Service Commission, and the Teaching Service Commission. Now, this is clearly a political case filed by Mahipal, filed by Coretta MacDonald, two politicians. The lawyers are Ford, politician, Ramjatan, politician, Trotman, politician, Amanza Desir, politician. And the other parties, the other applicants who have joined these politicians are, one, the Public Service Union, a trade union. Well, if you ever were in doubt that the Public Service Union is a front for the PNC, APNU, AFC, you have it right here. You have the evidence right here that they are a front, a political front masquerading as a union, the Public Service Union. So we can discount them. My worry as Attorney General and as a lawyer lies in the Police Service Commission and the Teaching Service Commission being now openly aligning themselves with APNU AFC, a political party. Under the Constitution, the Teaching Service Commission, the Police Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, and the Judicial Service Commission are independent constitutional bodies. And here it is, the Police Service Commission and the Teaching Service Commission have allowed themselves to be, well, they have not allowed themselves, they have joined a political party in filing a political litigation against the government. These are people who are clamoring for impartial treatment from our government. They want their independence to be respected. The Constitution says that they are independent and that independence must be respected. But here it is, they have shunned their masks. They have pulled off their masks and they are now openly political. So, Paul Slow, for example, who is the chairman of the Police Service Commission, and all the members of that commission are signaling to the world that they are politically partisan, that they have joined politicians in a litigation. That is a violation of the Constitution itself. But these people want you to treat them with impartiality and independence. Yet, they are openly embracing politically partisan postures, and they are now part of a political strategy and a political litigation. How can our government treat them impartially? Why should we not treat them as part of the opposition, as politicians? How can they impartially discharge the functions of their office? That is why you have that implosion in the police force now. Because now the public should see that there may be a sound basis for these policemen who are claiming that they are the subject of victimization and political discrimination by the Guyana, by the Public Police Service Commission. Because the Police Service Commission is now telling the world and showing the world that it is politically partisan. Imagine Mr. Paul Slow sent a message to me once, recently, that the Attorney General should not be appearing for the Police Service Commission. He wants his own lawyers. Now, I didn't object, though historically the Attorney General has always appeared for the service commissions. So Mr. Paul Slow expressed a displeasure of the current Attorney General appearing for the Police Service Commission. But the very Mr. Paul Slow sees no difficulty in joining two APNU MPs, Mahipal and MacDonald, in an ongoing litigation being represented by Ford and Ramjatan and Trotman. He has a difficulty with the AG appearing for him, but he doesn't have a difficulty. It's not I personally appearing. There are state council that would have been appearing. But he has no difficulty in Ford, Ramjatan, and Trotman appearing for him. This is the kind of vulgarity that you are witnessing, the country is witnessing, from a grouping called the Police Service Commission, who is a constitutional agency of independent status. How can the police force and police officers have confidence in a politically partisan body? And that I will have to explore a little more on this issue. But I thought that I would draw that to the public's attention, because we have to expose this duplicity and hypocrisy. And you know what the case is about, as I explained, is to stop the budget of these very agencies. So Paul Slow and the Police Service Commission are going to the court to stop their own budget from being granted. Can you believe these people? And they want the government to take them seriously. They want you, the population, to treat them with respect. I have no problem if you want to be a politician. That is your right. I am a politician. I am exercising my right. But I am not masquerading as independent. I am not going to take an office or take an appointment to an office that is independent. And that is the problem I have. I don't have a problem if Mr. Paul Slow or Mr. Conway would like to be politicians. They can go either at Freedom House or at Congress Place. That's their right. That's their freedom. But you can't want to be a politician and then masquerade as an independent constitutional office holder. That is hypocrisy. That is wrong. And that wrong and that hypocrisy must be exposed, because you are receiving public monies under the false pretense that you are impartial. That is what you're doing. You are receiving public funds under the false pretension that you are impartial, when you are a politician in camouflage. And I thought that I would emphasize that point for the public's consumption. Sabotaging your own budget. You don't care about your own budget not being granted. You're joining political forces to ensure that your budget is not granted. So I wanted to make that public. The government will continue its agenda of reviewing land transactions and reviewing contracts, and to file legal proceedings where necessary, as well as to call in the police where necessary to conduct the requisite criminal investigations, as well as to institute charges where there is evidential findings that charges should be instituted. And we in the government, and I as Attorney General, have no apologies for doing that. I have been reading in the press that I am witch hunting, that I am racist, that I am persecuting black people, that I am carrying out a vendetta, that I am vindictive. Me, all those labels have been dashed at me. Poor me. Let me remind you that I am part of a government. I am a single member of a collective called a cabinet and a larger collective called a government of Guyana. And my duty is to carry out the instructions given to me by that cabinet and by that government. Bishop Edghill, for example, has to carry out the government and the cabinet's instructions in relation to what roads and what bridges have to be built. Minister Manik Chand has to carry out the government's instructions in relation to the education program of the country. Similarly, I have to carry out the government's legal program for the country and the government's litigation pursuits. I am that person. And let me tell you how the government formulated the decision to move in this direction. We were in opposition for 5 years. We called upon the government of the day to do not engage in these transactions. After the no confidence motion was passed, we said to them that we will review these transactions. We said to them that criminal charges will be instituted once investigations reveal that charges should be investigated. We said that contract and the public procurement process will be reviewed and contracts will be terminated where there is corruption and where there is overspending and where there are breaches. We went on election campaign and we said that on the platform to the people of Guyana. We also had a manifesto that contained all these things. And we told the people that if you vote for us, these are the plans that we will execute. We will get back, we will go after the lands that were corruptly given to friends, families, and cronies. We said that we will not go after the small persons. We are not going to go behind people who are given house lots. We will go behind the persons, go after the persons who we know were in bed with the politicians, who were their financiers, and who got state properties illegitimately. We said that, and the people of Guyana elected us and gave us what is called a mandate to carry out these plans, to execute these plans. If we don't move in the direction that we are moving, then we would be breaching our promises to the people of this country, to the electorate who voted for us. Yes, I know tens of thousands did not vote for us, but tens of thousands voted for us. So every time one person cusses me about what I am doing, 10 are praising me because I'm carrying out their agenda and their promise, our promise to them. And they voted for me. The 10 that cussing me, they didn't vote for me. They don't want these sweetheart deals not to be investigated. So I see in the news that Roysdale Ford is appearing for Minister Winston Jordan and is accusing me of carrying out a vendetta against Jordan in relation to the BK Wharf issue. Now, BK breached his contract, did not pay rent for 10 years. Rather than terminate the contract, and BK did not build what he agreed to build, a hotel, a waterfront facility, and a whole set of things, build nothing. Did not even pay rent. Rather than terminate the contract for breach, they gifted BK the property. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the property is valued $8 billion. I put in the claim a property at Shore Base at Houston, 7 miles down the river, a quarter of the size of the wharf that they gave to BK, was sold for $18 million US. They sold an $8 billion property for $200 million. And the $200 million was only the outstanding rent that BK International had owed. So essentially, they basically sold him for $0. BK just paid the rent. That was the purchase price, $200 million. They accepted out of the $200 million, $20 million as a deposit. And then Minister Jordan, after the last government on March the 2nd, 2020, months after the last government proceeded to vest the title to BK, although BK paid $20 million out of $200 million. So the $180 million is not paid, but BK gets title. And the title says that it is free from all liabilities, meaning that BK does not have to pay anymore. So BK get a $8 billion property for 20 million. The people's property. And he got the title after, from a government that has already lost the elections several months later. And when I go after that transaction to get back the government's property, the state's asset, the people's asset, I am the bad one? I am wrong? I do. This is an upside down world. So Ford accuses me of vendetta and vindictiveness. Well, that is why he is where he is. And he will never come close to government. Once he continues to think like that, and anybody who thinks like that. Bramford, or Bransford, or whatever the gentleman's name is, I'm sorry if I mispronounce his name, bought a property that government has sold nearby. 150 million government sold the same size along the same roadway. Government sold one plot for 150 million. Then another plot next door for 130 million. Mr. Bramford, who is a member of the board of Lands and Surveys, gets Mr. Ben to do a valuation. The valuation comes in at 60 million. Bramford apparently says that's too much. Gets Mr. Ben to do a second valuation. The same valuation officer does a second valuation for 13.5 million, and he buys. And that transaction must not be investigated. The government must allow that to pass. So the people of Guyana will lose a $13.5 million property. A 60 million or 150 million, whichever valuation you want to use. And when I go after that property, I am racist. I went after BK. BK as far as I know, is an Indo-Guyanese, is owned by an Indo-Guyanese man. I go after BK, it's political witch hunting. I go after Bramford, is racism. So I sue BK for breach of contract for the school at the Linden Suzeg Highway, Yarrow Cabra. I sue BK International Company for that school. I sue Courtney Ben for breach of a contract for St. Rose's School. When I sue Courtney Ben, I am a racist. I'm suing a man named Maraj from Leguan in relation to the Leguan stellium. I am not racist then. That you will see that will be filed tomorrow. Maraj is an Indian man. I am not racist. But once I sue an Afro-Guyanese, I am racist. Well, you can speak from now until you get blue. The law will be applied across equally to everyone. That is what the Constitution says. And that is the racism that I keep speaking about. APNU, AFC, they have nothing else in the closet. Nothing else in their political chest. They have nothing in their armory. They can't point to track performance. They can't point to track record. They can't point to projects and accomplishments. They can't point to decency and integrity because the whole world saw them attempt to thief a government. They can't speak on the question of democracy. They can't speak about constitutionalism. They can't speak about the rule of law. So what are they left with? All they are left with is racism. And that is all that they're doing, whole day. Whole day. So they accuse, as soon as an Indo-Guyanese is promoted or is appointed to a job, or, is racism. If an Afro-Guyanese is promoted or appointed, you don't hear anything. But once an Afro-Guyanese is dismissed, is racism. They hired 5,000 to 7,000 persons over and above what is the requirement in the public sector. Over 5,000 to 7,000 persons. 99% of them are Afro-Guyanese. 99% of them are not qualified for the job. And they are fat to the public sector. When you dismiss them now, is racism. Is racism. In 1992, when the PPP won government, the makeup in the public service was over 95% Afro-Guyanese. When the PPP left government in 2015, the makeup of the public service was about 80% Afro-Guyanese. Where is the racism? If the PPP was really racial, then the statistics would have been reversed. The police force, the army, look at the composition. So the racism card is an old one. It is not picking up any traction anymore. Or is not picking up the traction that they expected to pick up. So it's an old horse that they are beating over and over again. So there are many more land transactions that have to be reviewed. Many more. Mr. Ben, who was at the head of the Lands and Surveys, used to openly say that only a certain race he will give lands to. He used to say that openly. The staff are still there. Afro-Guyanese staff have said so. So 99% of the lands that are being reviewed, unfortunately, they went to only one race. And all of the transactions, most of them are questionable. Most of them. So, what do you want? Me to go back and take lands from, I don't know, some other race? The same thing they did with GCOM. If Lowenfield is the miscreant, if Myers is the miscreant, if Mingo is the miscreant, you want me to charge? Who you want the police to charge? The whole world saw these 3 or these 4 people on display, trying to steal elections for and on behalf of APNU AFC. Who you want the police to charge? A white man from Australia? So, this race card, I don't know how effective it is, but it is nonsensical and it demonstrates the racism that I'm speaking about. And we have to continue to speak about the racism. Look at the story with Kwame McCoy. I keep saying that Kwame McCoy was chosen because he's Afro-Guyanese. He was chosen to be framed because he's Afro-Guyanese. Up to now, we can't see a clipping. Every time I hear this story, how Kwame McCoy is supposed to have assaulted this girl, this honorable member, it's a different part of the body she received this battery or this hitting. Some of them are saying that Kwame hit her in the face. Some of them are saying in the head. She is saying Kwame chuck her in the temple. Every time one of them speak, it's a different part of her anatomy was violated by Mr. Kwame McCoy. And up to now they can't provide this camera footage that they claim that they had. So all of that is part of the racism agenda that I'm speaking about. And as I keep saying, they try to stall that budgetary process to allow their case to be heard in the court. And you know what they succeeded in doing? Instead of stalling and delaying the budgetary process, they ended up causing the budgetary process to be accelerated and concluded within 4 days of the scheduled time. If that is not incompetence, well then I don't know what is. Imagine you start out with the objective of delaying a process, and by your own strategy, you ended up accelerating the process and causing the process to conclude 4 days before its scheduled conclusion. That is what they did in the budget estimates. So, the budget is now concluded, and the task of the government is to unfold the budget now, the budgetary program of development. And that is the task that we are now engaged in. It is an uphill task because right now you have, if you look at the number of contractors that are around, you will see that there is a small pool of contractors who are still dealing with 2020 budgetary contracts. Almost every one of them has about 3 to 4 contracts under the 2020 budget. And you now have the 2021 budget being approved, and contracts will begin to unfold. So we will have an uphill task in getting the work done, simply because of a paucity of human resources in the area of contracts, because we simply don't have enough contractors. And recall that side by side with the government's developmental agenda, which the budget speaks to, we have an equally packed developmental agenda on the private sector side. So we have a hotel going up soon. Constructions will begin, at the Chedichagan International Airport. We have another hotel that will begin its construction at the Ogle International Airport. We have a Hilton that will be going at somewhere in the vicinity of Shore Base. We have another hotel that will be going up somewhere by Giftland Mall. We have another hotel that will be going up somewhere in the vicinity of the Pegasus, not very far from there. We have another hotel that will be going up at Regent Street, where the president only last weekend turned the sod. So we have to find building materials, construction materials, as well as labor and equipment for these constructions. And I've only outlined hotels. I've not spoken about the huge projects that are on the government side and buildings that persons and companies are building every day to accommodate other areas of endeavors. I say all of that to say to you that Guyana is on the move, and we cannot waste time with any grouping of persons, especially in the leadership of any political organization, whose agenda is to stall development and to pull back whilst we are pushing forward. Those people we have to ensure that are kept far away so that they don't affect the developmental agenda of our country. Because they want to stop this train from taking off. They want to stop the train. Because if the train goes ahead at the speed that we would like it to go and the speed that it is likely to go, then they are ruined politically. They have no relevance politically. And that is why they keep playing that race card. But our Guyanese people are intelligent. And that is why the president is leading from the front on the issue of racial unity and finding ways and means of addressing the racial problem in our country. You will recall that the president was on the east coast of Demerara a few weeks ago and spoke about a program along a corridor that he defined as the Unity Corridor. And he identified as a first lap, sports, cricket in particular, being the medium that he will use to unite these communities. We said that we will commence that initiative of the president. We will implement that initiative rather upon the conclusion of the budgetary estimates. Well, the budgetary process is now concluded. And from next week, we will begin to unfold that program. We have to gather the equipment, and we are in the process of doing that so that we can prepare the grounds, the various cricket grounds for the cricket matches to be played. We will try to do, as far as possible, do the matches in such a way that the entire communities come out and participate, or at least spectate and be part of the fun and joy that we are hoping that these cricket matches excite. Then we are in the process of planning the budget for this program, as well as working out the fixtures for the cricket matches. The persons on the East Coast Cricket Board and Demerara Cricket Club, Demerara Cricket Association, or whatever the association is, are working together with the Minister of Sports in ironing out the fixtures, the budgets, etc., so that as of next week, we should begin the physical outlay of the program. And once that competition begins, as the President says, the winner of the competition, the community that wins the competition, will benefit from a presidential initiative of some type, either a computer center or, well, the President will determine. I don't want to preempt the President's choice of project which he will allocate to the community that wins the competition. Cricket will only be the beginning. The President has indicated that other sporting disciplines will follow: football, volleyball, etc. And then the intention is to move right across the country, not only on that East Coast corridor, but beyond, where we can carry this unity initiative using the vehicle of sports right across the length and breadth of our country. And at the same time, explore other endeavors which we intend to use to bring unity and togetherness among the communities of our country. So while we are trying to strive and to forge unity, we see elements trying to divide and be divisive, and we have to guard against that. My operator is signaling that I have come to program time, so I want to, as usual, thank you very much for spending the last 55 minutes or an hour with me and discussing the important events which would have taken place in our country over the past week or 2 weeks. Please join me next week, Tuesday, as we continue this discourse. Permit me to take this opportunity to thank you very much for being with me, and please enjoy the rest of this evening and the rest of the week. See you next week, Tuesday. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Good night.